Hey guys, and welcome to the Creatures Untamed podcast. I'm Kinsey.
And I'm Brandon.
And this podcast is a long time in the making. I think it's been about a year since we first originally came up with this concept.
Yeah, probably. Something like that, yeah.
And we're finally getting to it and have the set, everything's like ready to go. This is our first podcast episode. And originally we were thinking that it was just going to be audio only to start with. But we have made the plunge, and it will be audio and a video podcast.
Get it done.
Yes. So, to kind of just jump into it, as I said earlier, I'm Kinsey, and this is Brandon. We are your hosts, and we'll be your hosts. As far as, some goals for this podcast, we're reptile lovers. We have a small business. And so we're going to basically talk about that. That's like the point of this podcast is reptiles, herpetoculture, getting involved in the community, and really connecting with others. I'm personally really excited to do that. And I know Brandon is as well.
Oh, yeah.
So it's going to be very, very exciting. As I said earlier, I'm very excited to connect with the community with this podcast, and hopefully do some interviews with people in the community. There are a few people in mind that I kind of have in the back of my mind already to interview on the podcast kind of remotely, just because we don't have a setup here to accommodate for another individual. We're
not yet.
Yeah, a bit of a tight squeezed space for the set. But a few other, things that we're really looking forward to with this podcast is to kind of help push the boundaries on like our keeping and how we keep these animals and really communicate. When I first got into the hobby, 6 years ago? Or I guess because
almost 7.
Yeah, almost 7. Wow, that's crazy.
7,
yeah. So almost 7 years ago. Maybe even more than that. I don't know. I need to sit down.
I've been into reptiles for a really long time. Animals. I know you've been obviously, but all our lives pretty much. So
yeah, kind of like a combination of different times and things like that. But when we first got into the reptile hobby and things, I really felt like, and I don't know if you felt this way or not, I really felt like the hobby and people in the hobby really weren't too open with like their information. And I feel like just recently, within the last maybe like 2, maybe 3 years, people have really started to like open up and been like, okay, we're not going to gatekeep this info. Other people are keeping these animals, and we're going to help spread that.
That's kind of weird. Like, now that I think about it, I'm like, oh yeah, like
for sure.
That's weird though. Like, cause now, it's different now. Like everybody's kind of working together to kind of improve everyone's knowledge, which is, that's awesome. That's kind of what, the right direction. That's how we need to be, obviously, and it's not just like at work or somewhere else. But communication is key for a lot of things, like, for everything. Yeah. So, we just need to work together, together and, with research and all, things that we learn and just spread knowledge. Let's talk knowledge. Let's, communicate if you believe in something else.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, like we want to talk about like the hard topics when it comes to the hobby. There is a lot of controversial things out there that don't necessarily have to be controversial in the way of like, getting upset or completely disowning or, writing off certain keepers because of how they do certain things. But really just getting into that mindset. You can ask Brandon. I'm somebody that loves to get into somebody else's shoes and know what they think and why they think that. I love to just talk like the nitty gritty details, and him and I would actually, that's kind of how the podcast came about, is because we'd be driving to expos to go vend or, mainly vending. We vend a lot of shows, of our local shows in our local area, but also, going to like Tinley Park and NARBC and things like that. And we would just have these long car rides of, just conversations. Like, and it would either be spurred from a Facebook post or just something that we thought of as we were driving. And we were like, we need to like sit down and talk about these. Like,
Might as well. We're sitting down talking in the truck, driving. So
we're having 2 or 3 hour long conversations about a singular topic, or that leads into other topics that are controversial or just like topics of conversation. Yeah, and that's really how this podcast came about, you know? Yeah. So to kind of kick things off, for this first episode, we've kind of already talked about, you know, our intentions for this, podcast and the goals and things like that, and how this podcast originated. But I do want to use this first episode to have you guys, the listeners, get to know Brandon and I. And to kind of kick things off, you know, I have a few questions that we'll ask both of us. And, you know, not only that, but, you know, Brandon and I are a married husband-wife duo. We've been together for almost 7 years. Yeah. Married for a month. a month and a few days. Yeah. So that's very new. But, you know, that's kind of like the background on us. And really, you know, getting into reptiles heavily was right around the time Brandon and I got together. I would say that I was the one that kind of like was the catalyst to. I
had a couple, you know, reptiles.
Well, you had an iguana.
Yeah, I had an iguana, bearded dragon. You know, I mean, I think at the same time we were getting together and stuff like that. I don't remember
the bearded dragon. I remember the iguana, but I liked the iguana. So. Yeah,
so I had a few. I mean, and then growing up too, like I said, I've had reptiles. I've had, you know, dogs, cats, pets. You know, the norm. But yeah. I forgot where I was going with that.
Yeah, no, just talking about us, who we are. So that's fine. But yeah, for me, my history with animals is, I think, a little more extensive than yours. Just mainly in like the area of dogs. You know, a little background for me is I grew up with a mom as a dog breeder, and absolutely loved that. She ended up having to sell and whatnot in my high school. I think it was during my high school year, sometime in high school. And I loved taking care of the dogs. I was actually somebody that wanted to take it over eventually. Yeah. But, you know, things happen and whatnot. And that's actually what led me into reptiles. And how I got started into reptiles was my mom, you know, unfortunately had to sell all of our dogs and things like that, which was unfortunate. But we do still have Miss Priss, Miss Priss, and technically Bailey. Bailey was supposed to be, you know, one of those breeder animals, but all of, you know, my mom's dog breeding business, they were all of our pets, and so that's mainly why it was so unfortunate, is because I loved those animals so much. But at the same time, if that wouldn't have happened, I wouldn't be sitting here. Because if I would have just gone full force into dog breeding like I originally planned, I would not be an owner of a small reptile business right now, you know? Yeah. So I don't think it would have happened.
Yeah. It's weird to think about.
Yeah. And Brandon, you weren't really...
I wasn't too heavy like on like I'm fine with animals. I'm fine with, you know, I was fine with keeping them as pets, you know, not too much into like the whole breeding aspect of
just like a pet keeper.
Just a normal everyday, you know, pet keeper. And I guess until I met you, and then she obviously like she kind of kickstarted the whole breeding. She just had the breeding aspect, like
that was just like
in
me.
you,
like
she had to. I remember you telling me whenever pretty much that if you couldn't breed the dogs, you know
that this is what I was gonna do. Yeah.
You know, I'm but it's cool. Like, fell in love with it. It's cool.
Yeah, and like and I'm here now, and you're here now. But yeah, that's the background on Brandon and I's, you know, animal journey. There were, you know, a few other things. You know, I grew up having sugar gliders. I had bearded dragons. You know, my family had lots of things. There's a story about putting a goat in the back of our van. There's lots of things that, you know, I grew up with, and having a pony and all the things. But I won't bore you guys with that too much. We're here to talk about reptiles. And that's, you know, really what we've surrounded ourselves with, and what we hope to continue to do for many, many, many years to come, and raise our children with, and things like that. So that'll be really cool. But yeah, that's our background. And now, you know, we'll kind of talk about how, you know, KLW Reptiles got started. Because, yes, this is the Creatures Untamed podcast. But before Creatures Untamed, there was KLW Reptiles and still is. That originated from me, you know. Originally, you know, Brandon and I were just together.
In her bedroom closet.
In my bedroom closet. Started with technically a Jackson chameleon. If you guys are familiar with our logo, it is a Jackson chameleon named Boris. That is our logo, who it's modeled after. So that was really, you know, kind of a soft spot in my heart, because if I wouldn't have picked up that Jackson chameleon, I really don't think that would have, like, I wouldn't have gotten into things right when I did. I probably would have still.
I think you kind of like jump started the reptile side of you, pretty much, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and it really opened my eyes, you know, like I knew the dog world and I knew all of that, the ins and outs of it, because I was very much ingrained in that with my mom. But for the, you know, reptile side of things, I didn't know that there was like this massive world. And to kind of start things, it was Boris, you know, our male Jackson chameleon, that I picked up at like a flea market or something. Yeah, like a swap meet that's where I got him. I got him from a swap meet, on a whim, which I don't recommend. And I have people ask me if chameleons are a first time like good reptile pet, and they're definitely not. No. So, you know, wish I wouldn't have done that, but at the same time, I'm very grateful. Because it really kickstarted things.
It opened up the world of the knowledge of taking care of these animals.
And I remember I was watching, you know, if we're going to talk about like YouTube and like that sort of thing, I was watching Taylor Nicole Dean on YouTube. Oh, yeah. I had just like gotten into like what she was, you know, putting out there, and a few other people as well. And, you know, really enjoying that, and I was actually already making YouTube content, but it wasn't reptile related. No. It was like what's in my purse, my makeup, you know. It was like I like makeup, and so it was like that driven fashion, that sort of stuff. Silly little videos that Brandon and I would put together, which are actually still on the internet that I haven't taken down because I just think they're so funny. I
want to recreate that.
Yeah, but that'd be kind of funny. Maybe we should. But yeah, there's just like an extensive history with that, and you know, getting Boris, the Jackson chameleon, really just threw me into the world of reptiles, because I started researching and I want to make sure everything was perfect. And then he ended up getting this growth that I didn't understand what it was, and the vets couldn't tell me what it was, and he ended up unfortunately passing. But I had him for, I want to say like 2 or 3 years, and he was an adult when I got him. I don't know how old he was. Didn't really get him from the best source, so I really don't know much past that. Moving from the, you know, Jackson chameleon, I then got into leopard geckos. Yeah. And, you know, I got a few adult leopard geckos, and I was like, I'm going to breed. Like, this is what I'm going to do. And I was still living in my parents' house. I was still living in my parents' house, and I didn't tell them what I was doing, and I had them shipped to the house. They didn't know, and my mom eventually found out because she came in my room one day.
It took them a while.
I think it took like 3 or 4 months before my mom even knew.
You were doing it for a few months, and she was doing it successfully. She had I can't remember if I had built the rack.
Not yet.
Not yet. Mm-mm. She didn't, or that wasn't.
No, okay. I had them in tubs, but it was like on like a makeshift rack. Yeah, it wasn't like a full rack like you would see today.
Yeah, a little ghetto, but
it was just.
It worked. Yeah. It was working at the time. You did it for a while. And,
it definitely worked. You know, I got babies. I hatched out my first babies, and my mom eventually found out. Which my mom loves animals. She's a diehard animal person, so. You know, she was definitely down for it. You know, she didn't have any qualms to it, really. Yeah. She was just like, what the?
Yeah, she wasn't expecting that at all.
Yeah, she was a little taken aback. But then when she saw the babies, she was like, oh, these are so cool. She loved them. She sent me pictures of them. I think she was checking the incubator for me, like, to make sure that they, like, when they would pop out, was I still in school? Maybe I was just gone for the day. I remember getting a picture from her of a leopard gecko hatching, and I think it was like the first one, because she was just in there checking and was super excited. And so moving from that, I got a crested gecko named Penelope. I got her off Craigslist with a tank and all for like $150, and I was like, so expensive.
Right.
Like, but it came with like a 18 by 18 by 24 Exoterra, all set up, all the things, some food, her. Definitely not expensive. That's a pretty good steal. Maybe it was 150 or 200, but
I don't remember.
But yeah, then I was like, ooh, like crested geckos. I love crested geckos. They're so cool. And I mean,
I think I still got videos of her.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I still do. They're actually probably still on our Facebook, or not on Facebook, on Instagram. I'm fairly certain.
I think I got a couple videos of her still.
Yeah.
In your bedroom and everything.
Yeah, but Penelope is the one that kick-started the crested gecko addiction. Yeah. We got the Jackson chameleon, the leopard geckos, crested geckos, then a ball python, and we're here where we're at now. So it definitely spiraled, which is totally fine because now, full-time business owner, small business owner, Brandon and I run this thing, and I'm full-time. We're working on getting Brandon to go full-time. Hopefully within the next 2 years. That's the goal. Was a year, but then pandemic and everything that's going on, we're like, maybe we'll push that out a little bit. They shy away from talking about the business side to animal breeding and things like that, and I'm not afraid to talk about that. I'm very much like an entrepreneur type of person, and I hope to have other businesses in the future, but this is my passion, and this is what I think is my really lifetime goal, to really influence people and help other people come into this hobby in a better way that even I feel like I did. I feel like for me, coming into this hobby, there's some things I definitely would have changed, and I hope I can help some new people coming into the hobby.
We're here to help. We're here to help and
connect, learn the whole thing. Yeah, so
we're also here to be helped.
Yes,
learn. There's always knowledge that's gonna go around, and we're gonna learn. We're gonna be learning, and everyone's gonna be learning, and
Yep. So, kind of a rundown of KLW Reptiles and today. What is KLW Reptiles working with today? What are our goals and our projects and things like that? And I'm very much somebody that loves everything. If you guys couldn't tell by the intro story of how I got started, had a little bit of everything, and I still do have a little bit of everything, with certain interests in some things over others, and things that I would like to kind of phase out and get more into. And I figured we can kind of talk about that a little bit. But we're a duo. We run the business as a duo, but Brandon really keeps track of certain species over me because of the amount of animals that we do have and the amount of species that we have. If it was just me keeping track of all of these species, I couldn't do it. And that's why he's, takes care of the stuff that he does, and, with kind of growing things and the projects that he has. So I figure, I'll hand it over to you and let you kind of talk about some of the species that you work with, whether that be bug, reptile, what have you. And you can kind of talk about that a little bit.
Okay. Well, pretty much, how you said, it kind of all started with Kinsey, kind of breeding everything. We needed, obviously food for the geckos and everything. So she had her own little colony of dubia roaches. At the time, I wasn't really too interested in the whole breeding aspect and all that.
He was just there. He's kind of on the sidelines.
Yeah, I was just kind of
enjoying it with me, but
helping. I was just helping her.
Help me clean when I go on vacation. You'd help.
Yeah. I was just always helping and stuff, but the whole breeding aspect and everything, I wasn't really I didn't.
You were she can do that. I'll just be here to help clean up poop.
Yeah, pretty much, I guess. I honestly didn't know how big of a world it was. Yeah. And I guess just how to, I guess, the knowledge around everything, around whether that's insects, bugs and all, and then reptiles and all, just everything. And then the colorations, the patterns and colors of everything. At the time I didn't know any of that. I was a noob.
That's okay. Yeah, I was too, realistically.
Yeah, I didn't know anything, but yeah, so Kinsey was breeding dubia roaches. She started breeding dubia roaches, obviously the animals needed food. So she was doing dubia roaches. slowly, you know, she started getting more crescent geckos. We started growing, and so therefore dubia roaches started growing. The whole, you know, the amount that we had, and she pretty much asked me if I would take it over.
I wasn't doing a very good job of taking care of the roaches. Yeah. I was like, I know I'm not. And I was like, roaches, I don't really like. I like my geckos. I don't really like the roaches.
I don't know. And then the roaches, I don't know. They never really bothered me, I guess.
Yeah, he was just like, these are cool. Let me stick my hand in there.
Oh yeah, and I'll pick them up in there. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. The roaches don't really freak me out, but dubia roaches are easy and everything. So I mean, they're easy. I kind of took that over, and I started breeding all the roaches and everything. And so I mean,
giant Madagascar hissing roaches.
Oh yeah, and then you had hissers too, and then that
just as like a pet.
Yeah, that was more.
These are cool.
Yeah, at the time that was more of a pet. And then I mean that too. We just wanted to grow. We got a few different roach species, you know, like the hissers and dubia. Then we got Halloweens and etc. A few different roaches, and now. But yeah, I mean the dubia roaches are growing, and I started doing that, and then right now I just got ball pythons. I started getting more into the ball pythons. I think we were together for about a couple years.
I think you started getting ball pythons yourself, and like, oh, maybe I'll breed these, like. Kind of that in the back of your mind.
Yeah, well, I started off with a banana. It was the banana het pied, and then a pied male.
Well, technically, we started off with it
was the normal
the
het
bumblebee,
pied.
And then the normal het pied.
Yeah. We got a normal het pied. Again, not from a reliable source. Yeah. We were actually just talking about this the other day, and like, we bought him really like still being newbies. Yeah, you know, we bought him
realizing
not looking for things, I guess signs of things, because he ended up having mites, which
thank goodness we took him to your house because he was your snake.
Yeah,
we took he didn't come to mine
to your house and
into my room.
That would have been a bad situation.
That was a perfect quarantine situation.
We handled that.
Thank goodness.
Like, not very. Yeah. Okay. But yeah, anyways, from not a reliable source, and we had the normal het pied. We wanted to, and like I said, not really knowing, I wanted to eventually breed him to a pied, to a visual pied, to therefore hopefully get pieds. That's kind of that's really honestly what I fell in love with, was the pied. I really loved the pied ball pythons, and they were just gorgeous. They were awesome. I loved the white, and the pattern. So I just kind of wanted to go from there, produce pieds, and kind of just now I want to work with, still pied, but like bright colors. I really like the bright colors, and that's what I kind of really fell in love with, was the bright colors and the different patternings, the patterns, and so we did end up getting the banana het pied and pied male. Those were the first
we've had a few
two
clutches. Yeah. Total of only 2 clutches ever, right? Yeah, because we had one last year and we had one this year. But coming year, we have 6 or 7 possible.
Yes.
Females that we're planning to breed.
4,
right? I think
6
so. Maybe 6 for
6
sure.
6 to 8.
6 to 8. Okay.
Yeah, on top of my head. I mean, it's not a lot, but
I'm going from one clutch from the last 1 to 2 years, Yeah,
and I'm still learning the whole patterns and the colors
and the genetics behind them.
Yeah, I'm still learning all of that, which I mean, it's a lot to learn, but it's also not as bad as what I thought. It kind of scared.
Seemed more intimidating.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, exactly. It was just I was intimidated by all of it pretty much, but I mean. It's easy to learn. Kind of once you get the hang of it a little bit, it opens the door pretty much after you kind of learn the gist. Yeah, exactly. Once you get the gist of everything, it opens the door for it all. So, but like I said, I'm still learning all the morphs and the genetics behind everything. And
when I feel like I mean, I don't really know. We don't really talk with a lot of ball python breeders, but just because you're really starting to get into that, and so I'm starting to try and conversate with some, and we have a few friends, at the local shows and stuff that we can talk to, and they've been helpful. Oh, yeah. But as far as like genetics go and like the morphs of them, when it comes to that, I feel like unless you work with it or you want to work with it, it's like, oh, I don't really know too much about that.
Yeah, pretty much.
Because there's so many. I don't know how somebody could like lock that away in their brain and know all of that.
Yeah, that's what Zach over at Zach Mountain, he told me too. Pretty much, you know, he's like,
just know what you need to know because of what you want to work with.
He was like, you pretty much won't know until you have them in your possession. Like that's kind of how you learn, and like that. Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like exactly.
Hands-on experience, basically.
Pretty much. And like I feel like it's working. You know what I mean? I'm learning. I'm still learning, but like I got these, you know, new ball pythons, and I think it's definitely helping. Like it's
like actually
helping recognize. Yeah, like it's, I don't know. It's awesome. We got some really cool projects going on in the ball pythons, and
hopefully also this coming year, but also next year, like 2024 will be really good too.
Yeah, I'm excited. We need to get more ball pythons.
Yeah, that's what he keeps saying. He's like, we need to get more ball pythons. Yeah, we need to get more.
Need more money.
And I'm like, we need more money to do that, but we also need more space. Yeah. We need to get a house first.
We're working on it. Yeah, and then I also work with the isopods. So I pretty much take care of the isopods and springtails. We only have 2 species of the springtails. So just the normal white ones and your temperate springtails, and then the orange. They're like almost like a real neon. I had to get them whenever I saw them. I had to get them. Yeah, he
was like, we have to have those.
I had to. They were expensive, but I was like, and it was like a little tiny.
$75 for like a tiny little deli, but he was like, we have to have those.
When I saw them, I had.
I was like, okay, we can get them.
That's
fine. Which is fine.
They're awesome.
I like them too. They're really cool.
They're really cool. And then I mean, so even that's exciting. And then the isopods, I work with the isopods and breeding the reptile or the isopods and taking care of them for the most part. And
I think that's it.
That's about
like
it, right?
Roaches, isopods, snakes is like your thing. And
for the most part, we also do mealworms. I do the mealworms,
superworms if we had superworms, but we don't have superworms right now.
And then I plan on doing our rats as well. So in the future, I plan on doing the rats and breeding rats, you know, doing
that side of things. Because with the snakes, I feel like if you're a snake breeder on any semi-large scale, which I mean, we only have like 20 snakes, 25 snakes maybe. 20. And I feel like at any scale of having a snake, you probably should breed their food because they're very expensive to feed.
It can get expensive, I mean, and then once you get a certain amount, and then, you know, obviously with the adults as well, it can get a little pricey. So I plan on doing the rats in the future. When
we get into that,
and then we just
need the space.
We just need space, and we're working on that. We're getting our own place and everything. So, that's good. That's all I work with, really. I mean, I help you still with the cressids and gargs and everything. I help her out a little bit here and there whenever she needs it. And I mean, I know.
He knows a lot.
I know a decent amount about.
That's one thing that I'm very grateful for in the way that we've worked with the species that we do is we started with, you know, the Leos and things like that, but as far as anything that we were producing of quantity of, you know, to where the majority of what we were selling at shows was crested geckos and gargoyle geckos, and that still really is where it's at. We will be breeding other things, you know, down the line, which I kind of want to go over those with you guys as well, just so you guys can get a real good feel of who you're listening to and the things that we work with and that sort of thing. So, you know, Brandon works with the roaches, the isopods, the snakes, and then every once in a while he'll kind of pitch in for me if I need any help. But since I've gone full time, I've really not needed too much extra help, just maybe here or there. And as far as what I work with, that would be our crested geckos, our gargoyle geckos, our chahua. We only have a few chahua pairs. I think we only have 2, and I have another female that's growing out. And then on top of that, we're also working with Sarasonorums, Urodactyloides. What else? I'm working with Strophuris, yes, Strophuris, Tanacatas. I could be wrong on how to say those scientific names. Everybody says them different. Don't yell at me.
I can't say it.
Yeah, scorpion-tailed geckos. We work with those. We work with quite a few different species on my side of things, but the good thing about a lot of them is they have almost all the same care except for some of those others. One thing I'm very, very excited for this coming year, that we will have the first time or the first chance to produce our pink tongue skinks. We also have blue tongue skinks, although, as I said earlier, we are thinking about kind of narrowing down our projects to really focus in on some stuff. I'm somebody that loves to have pets, so we do have 2 blue tongue skinks, one Maruki and a northern, and we might end up kind of moving those guys along, although they are my pets, and so I'm not too excited to do that. We also work with leopard geckos. So the leopard geckos, though, I'm hoping to kind of phase those guys out. I love leopard geckos. I always will. But kind of narrowing down our projects. I really love arboreal species of gecko. And I need more space. And you need more space for your snakes, too. So, kind of looking at it from more of a business side of things, that's probably what's going to have to happen to make room for some of the other stuff that we're really excited to work with and to dive deeper into.
Expanding on.
Yes, yeah. So it's unfortunate, but at the same time, I really enjoy those animals, so it very well could happen that we get them in the future, or I could decide to just keep them, because I tend to do that.
Kind of did.
I kind of decide, oh, okay, I guess I'll part with them. I'll take them to a show. Oh, they didn't sell at this show. I bring them home. Well, they're just not going to leave now. They're going to stay here, and they're going to stay with us. I tend to do that. So if you guys see something at a show, don't expect it to be at the next show all the time. Because I like to keep it. And so, that's kind of a rundown of some of the stuff that we work with. Kind of a wide range of things. And I really want to try and pare down a little bit, though, if I can. Kind of break my heart a little bit in some areas. But we do work with African fat tails, too. So that's kind of my thing, like with the Leos. Like, okay, maybe I'll keep the Leos for another year. And then maybe we'll let those guys go. And then we'll have our African fat tails. And because I like those guys too, and that can be in my more terrestrial species of lizard and gecko. But yeah, we work with quite a few different things. And moving in from that, I want to talk to you guys about some podcast episodes, about some topics that we are hoping to talk about on this podcast. Hopefully this podcast is perceived well and you guys are enjoying it so far. If you are, give it a like on YouTube, or I believe you can also rate it on Spotify. I'm still learning though, so don't hold me to that.
Yeah, I know YouTube, but I don't know Spotify.
Yeah, so some of this stuff we're still learning, but go ahead and give it a good rating if you guys are enjoying. And we'll talk about some of the upcoming episodes that we hope to talk about, along with hopefully interviewing some people. Like I said earlier, I do have some ideas for some interviews. I just need to contact them and see if they'd be willing. And I really want to do, some kind of breeder spotlights and, talk to some of those breeders that just go to shows, but they don't have online presences or, that sort of thing. So I don't know if they'll be down for that, but I do, want to see if they'd be willing, because I think that'd be really cool. But as far as some podcast topics, I do have a list here, and that's kind of, you guys see us looking off to the corner if you're viewing on YouTube. It's because I have an outline of how to run the podcast. So just keep that in mind. Some of our podcast topics for the future include, but are not limited to, and if you guys have any suggestions, leave that down in the comments or get a hold of us on Instagram. That sort of thing, and let us know.
All that good stuff.
Yes. So some of the ideas that we have are, and we kind of teased it earlier, are tips for vending at your expos or attending an expo. And I hope that podcast, I can kind of do 2 segments in that podcast where we can talk about vending an expo from a business standpoint and a breeder standpoint and the kind of vibe that you should be giving off, but also a customer standpoint and how to look at and buy animals that are healthy so you guys don't get ripped off. Because we've definitely had a few instances where we're like, oh, we didn't know what we were doing. So we want to pass on that knowledge. So some of these podcasts can be very, very educational. And if it's not your jam, you guys don't have to watch them. They'll be kind of podcast specific. But we will also have some just weird podcasts that we just enjoy, and we can just kind of, I guess, shoot the shit, as some people would say. And yeah, so some of the other topics that may be combined into one topic, depending, are women in the reptile industry. That's one that I'm personally very excited to talk about. I've had a few experiences that I would love to talk about just to start conversation. Again, I want to talk about those hard-hitting topics, or at least in my mind, that are hard-hitting topics. That may be kind of controversial for some, but that are meant to start conversation and discussion, because you can't have any change or any realizations unless you start that topic of conversation. So women in the reptile industry, and really any industry, because it kind of goes across the board. The next one that I have to kind of tell you guys about is animal hoarding, and the impact that PetTube has had on the community. This is a specific topic that was very, I guess, big in the PetTube world a little while ago. It's actually probably been like 6 to 8 months, or even longer. But I still want to talk about it, because I think there are some very good talking points within that. Definitely. And we can also share, a little bit of my story, because like I said, I did used to film on YouTube, and I did used to film my like reptile journey. I do have the mass majority of my beginning stages of getting into reptiles was on YouTube. It's not there anymore because I'm very embarrassed by a lot of it. And I was going through a lot personally at the time, so definitely don't have those videos online anymore, unless I've looked at them and like decided that they were okay to continue to put out there, as far as like what I do feel comfortable with and that sort of thing. But I would love to talk about that. I think like I said, there's some really good talking points when it comes to animal hoarding. A lot of people look at breeders and they're like, oh my gosh, are you hoarding? And it's like, no, but we can get into that a little bit more in the actual episode. And then I think something that would be a really cool dynamic to talk about is business, and I already mentioned this earlier, is the business side of things in, the reptile world versus pet-only keepers, and people that can go above and beyond for their animals. And, there's like a stigma out there with business owners that breed reptiles or do it full time, that a lot of people say like, oh, you don't take care of your animals because you make money from them. There's like a weird dynamic, I feel like, in the back of some people's mind, when it comes to that. And so I would love to discuss it.
I feel like they kind of look at that like what are they called with the dogs?
Like, oh my gosh, I'm blanking. Puppy mills. Like with puppy mills and dog breeders. Like with dog breeding. I feel
like that's how they look at. Whenever somebody's making money by breeding reptiles and selling reptiles, they kind of look at it like
that you're like a reptile mill, or if you're gonna compare it to like a puppy mill.
I think I feel like that's how they're always kind of put together.
Yeah, kind of portrayed next to each other.
When obviously in reality, not every dog breeding business is gonna be like a puppy mill. You know what I mean? And
there's a, like, I always tell people, or at least I always tell you, because I don't really talk to a lot of people, like the reptile world and dog breeding world, basically the world in general, is not just black or white. There's a lot of gray areas, and there's a lot of different levels to things, and there's obviously the really bad, and then there's also the really good that comes along with that. And a lot of people focus on the really bad, and associate,
I said always.
And associate, like, I feel like there's a stigma, like I said, with business owners.
Everybody just
with
almost
the bad.
Always, but
it's more common than not. I hear a lot of people saying, "Oh, I don't want to do this for money," or anything like that. And I mean, hey, if you don't want to do that, that's totally fine. Everybody can do what they want, But also, and that same token, it's not bad to do it for money. And I'm somebody that does it as a living. And hopefully we can have Brandon, come on to that as well. and we can, help educate and bring that, across, as long as you're doing it the right way. If you aren't doing it the right way and you're being overwhelmed, then yeah, you're probably doing it the wrong way, and you need to take a step back and really reassess. Reevaluate, so that's a topic, we kind of got into it a little bit there, but that's a topic that I would love to talk about. That is something that I think is very important to talk about.
This podcast, we're going to be talking about a bunch of different things, whether it's controversial, or if it's business.
I also, like, if it's controversial, I hope that we can still come off as impartial and, still try to understand other people's perspectives, because that's something that I always try to do.
We're pretty open-minded about things. Yeah. I think it'll go well.
I want this to be like a safe space for people that they can, no matter what. I might not agree with you, but I'm not gonna I'm
not gonna bash on you though.
It's just one of those things. So another podcast topic that I would love to dive into is Facebook toxicity, or social media toxicity. And I have a pretty interesting, at least I think it's interesting, story with that. And, I've experienced, not myself being like the brunt of the toxicity, but like being a bystander and watching it on Facebook mainly. That's why I say Facebook, because there's been a lot of stuff, that I kind of got accustomed to, that like, oh, Facebook is toxic and things like that. But there's actually other platforms that are nowhere near that way. And so it's really interesting, to kind of dive deeper into that, and talk about like why that is. And also just like if there's toxicity in the reptile world, kind of shining a light on that and asking why. Like, what is that serving, and how is that serving the community? How could we better, express our emotions? Because a lot of times there's a lot of emotion involved. How can we as keepers and, people in the herp space really discuss that a little bit more and better without all of the toxic craziness.
And excuse the snoring if you hear snoring.
Yeah, or was that Miss Pris?
Yeah, the
Pomeranian.
She's snoring away.
Don't mind that. And then the last one is just tips. Tips for new keepers, tips for breeders, tips for anybody in between, people that are just here to enjoy while they're cleaning up poop, Like, there's also people that love to listen about topics that they have nothing to do with, because it's so interesting to them, and they didn't know the world existed, and kind of open their eyes. So yeah, just tips for people, and really trying to help that new person, but also already established breeders. I really try my best to help people out. If you guys are conversating on any of our platforms or anything like that, it's normally me, kind of conversating with you. Hopefully eventually Brandon can kind of jump in on that a little bit. But he works a full-time job, so that'd be kind of crazy if he was messaging you guys at 2 a.m. I can do that.
Yeah, so, I can do that.
Yeah, so, I'm really excited for this podcast, and I hope that you guys are too. I know that Brandon and I are both equally excited. I'm one of those people that it's taken so long to get everything together, because I wanted it done like a certain way.
Yeah, we're kind of procrastinators, but we are working though.
Yes, like we've got stuff going on, so it's just taken a lot longer than what I was originally anticipating. Yeah. When we originally got this idea, we're like, yeah, let's go home and buy this stuff and do it right now. Definitely that's not how that happened. So, but we're happy to be here now. We're happy to be filming our very first, podcast episode. We do have some hopefully big announcements coming in the future, as far as the podcast goes and that sort of thing. We're really excited to see where this takes us. And hopefully we can have some really cool personalities and really cool business owners and people that just do this as a fun little thing. Yeah, I would love to have some people on and just pick their brain. And because I love the human experience in that way. So thank you guys so much for listening. If you guys are on YouTube, thank you so much for watching. This was our first ever Creatures Untamed podcast episode. I think it went pretty well.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that I don't have to do a whole lot of editing. That's like something that I really don't want to have to do. But I think there's a few spots I'll have to edit, but nothing too crazy. Yeah, nothing too crazy. So thank you guys so much for listening and or watching. Find us over on Instagram at the Creatures Untamed podcast or KLW Reptiles. That's where I'm more active, and you guys can really get a hold of us. I will also leave, any other links down in the description box. And I believe in the show notes for Spotify and maybe Apple Music. I gotta see where we're gonna post this. I gotta see. So gotta mess around with it. So thank you guys so much for listening and or watching, and give us a follow over on our social medias, and we will talk to you next time.